All right, kiddos, we are on Unit 5, Week 3 this week, and our story of the week is called Cliffhanger. So go ahead and get your word collectors out. Make sure you have your earbuds in and the volume up, and you are ready to start your vocab for the week. Our first word this week is ridge. A sentence using the word ridge is, this mountain ridge is jagged at the top. So this mountain ridge is jagged at the top. So I want you to think about, what do you think the word ridge means based on these picture clues and sentence clues, and then go ahead and write that down in your word collector. So a ridge is a long and narrow upper part of something, especially a hill or a mountain. So a ridge is a long and narrow upper part of something, most specifically a hill or a mountain. So if you look at these pictures, right here, we have someone walking the ridge of a mountain, which looks terrifying in my opinion, but they're walking the narrow upper part of that mountain, which is called the ridge. And then this other picture, another picture that scares me half to death. We have a biker on the edge or upper part, the ridge of this mountain. Our next word is tract. The camel riders have trekked many miles. The camel riders have trekked many miles. So think about, what does trekked means? Maybe think about a word you could put instead of trekked to make that make sense, that sentence make sense. Go ahead and write that down in your word collector, what you think trekked means. So trekked means traveled slowly. So if you were riding camels and trekking through the desert, you would be traveling slowly through the desert. So I want you to think about, if wild horses trekked miles in the heat in search of water, would they be lively, so have a lot of energy, or do you think they would be very tired? So I would definitely say that if they're trekking through the heat and in search of water, they would probably be tired because they would be moving slowly. So those horses would be moving slowly as they trekked. Our next word is coil. This rope is in a coil. So kind of look at this picture clue for sure, and look at the shape of the rope. So it says that this rope is in a coil. So look at what this rope looks like and what shape it is, and that will give you a lot of clues to predict the definition of coil. So a coil is something that is wound around and around in a circular or spiral shape. So that picture of the rope, it was wound around and around in a circular shape. So these are some examples of coils. This one right here, this is a spring. Okay, you may have seen something like this before. This is coiled. It's in a circular shape. And then this one right here, this is some wire, some copper wire that has been coiled into a circular shape. Our next word is void. This cavern is an underground void. So this word might be a little bit trickier, but use those picture clues in this sentence to make a prediction of what you think void means. It's an underground void. So a void is an empty space. A void is an empty space. So if a mountain climber were on a hard climb, the void behind them would seem what? So imagine yourself, you're a mountain climber. Let's say you're at the ridge or you're at the top of the mountain. If you looked behind you, you would see a void. So you would see an empty space. That void or that space would seem what? What do you think? What would you fill in the blank? I would say that that void behind me, that big empty space on the top of the mountain, would seem very scary. Okay, maybe you think that empty space at the top of a mountain would look beautiful. Maybe you think it would look cool. Okay, I personally would think it would be scary. So void is an empty space. Our next word is shaft. A shaft is the main part of a column or other structure or a high, narrow space. So this is a picture of a glacier shaft. It's kind of hard to see. So it's a picture of a glacier shaft. So a shaft is the main part of a column or other structure or a high, narrow place. So it's a high and a narrow place. So an example of shaft would be the miners entered the mine through a narrow shaft. So narrow means small, so like a small space. Okay, so if miners are going through a small, narrow shaft in a mine, think about, would a shaft be dark? I would think that yes, if you have a small, narrow space, a shaft is likely going to be dark. So if you think about the shaft of like a cave or a mountain, okay, it might look like a cave. It's a structure in a high, narrow space. Our next word is repel. This climber knows how to repel. This climber knows how to repel. So if you look at this picture, you can look at this climber, kind of look at the gear that this climber is wearing. It says that they know how to rappel. So what do you think that movement or that means to be able to rappel down a mountain? So to rappel is to lower yourself down the face of a cliff by a rope fastened to the top of the mountain. So if you are going to rappel down a cliff or a mountain, you would start at the top, and the rope would be connected to the top of the cliff or the mountain. And the other end of that rope would be fastened to you, probably with like a harness, and you would stay connected to that rope as you made your way down the cliff or the mountain. So if you look at these pictures, there's people that are rappelling down mountains or cliffs. As you can see, they're holding onto a rope, they're wearing a harness, and they're making their way down. Our next word is foresaw. A sentence using the word foresaw is people brought umbrellas with them because they foresaw the rainstorm. So people brought umbrellas with them because they foresaw the rainstorm. So go ahead and think about what foresaw means and write that prediction in your word collector. Foresaw means saw or knew beforehand. Saw or knew beforehand. So if you foresaw it was going to rain at the park, what would you bring? So if you knew beforehand, let's say before you went to the park with your friends, you went ahead and checked the weather, and you saw that there was a chance it was going to rain. So if you knew that beforehand, before going to the park, what would you bring with you? So you'd probably bring rain boots. Maybe you'd wear rain boots. You'd bring a jacket, maybe like a poncho. Maybe you'd bring an umbrella. Maybe you'd bring like an extra sweatshirt in case one gets wet. So if you knew beforehand or you foresaw it was going to rain, you would probably bring those things. Our next word and our last word this week is descent. This biker has begun his descent down the mountain. This biker has begun his descent down the mountain. So think about what that word means. Go ahead and make that prediction of the definition. Descent is the act of coming or going down from a higher to a lower place. So descent is the act of coming or going down from a higher to a lower place. So that picture we just looked at, the biker was going down from the top of that hill or that mountain to the lower part of that hill or mountain. So he was descending down the mountain. So think about, how might an airplane make a sharp descent? So if you've ever rode on an airplane, as you're nearing the end of your flight, usually the captain will come over the intercom and tell you that the plane has begun its descent. So that means the plane is starting to go down lower in the sky so that they can eventually land. So if an airplane made a sharp descent, what do you think that would look like? That would probably mean that they made a really sharp descent, maybe like a fighter plane in the Air Force or something like that would make a sharp descent. All right, kiddos, that is our last word for this week. Remember to go ahead and go back, pause where you need to, rewind, and get all those definitions. Make sure you work on every single part of your vocab Foursquare, okay? All right, thanks for watching, kiddos.